Bonjour, Kinamagi and Nene, Ireland and Dishneykas, and welcome to the newest episode on the Social Studies Network. Today's episode, Chapter 2, Section 6, The Kingdom of Songhai. So we're going to log into Google Earth as we begin this lesson. Let's grab our bearings on the planet, places we've been in this unit. Remember, we started out in here in the Pacific Northwest, came through here in the Southwest, the Eastern Woodlands, the Great Plains, and then we hopped across the Atlantic, West Africa. You can see in relationship, here's Europe, the other part of the triangle that will be discussed during the Columbian Exchange portion. We've talked about Ghana, Mali, and our newest one will be Songhai. They're all in this region. We can zoom in here. You can see that there's desert, then we have some savannas, and then eventually we get into tropical rainforest here. There are a couple major rivers through here, including the Niger River. And you can see the modern countries of Niger, Mali. We're also going to be looking at our questions for inquiry. How did the location of the three empires impact the cultural and economic development of each? And what led to Songhai's growth and demise as an empire? The decline of the Mali led to the rise of the Songhai. Songhai was a small kingdom that had been ruled by Mali. After Mansa Musa's death, the people of Songhai were not happy with the new rule. Under their leader, Soni Ali, they took over what was once Mali around 1400. Soni Ali took over the trade routes and created a huge army for Songhai. He expanded the territory, and Songhai became much larger than Mali. This would be the equivalent of Michigan rebelling against the United States and taking it over, as far as a piece taking over the whole. Songhai thrived for many years, expanding territory, encouraging learning, and continuing to offer a place of study for Muslim scholars. However, once Soni Ali died, his son became ruler, and he quickly was overthrown by Askia Muhammad I, a military leader. Which is an interesting story because Askia Muhammad was never supposed to be the leader. The term Askia in some sources suggests it means the usurped ruler, which means he wasn't in the right bloodline, didn't have the right family tree to be the ruler. But he was able to overthrow the ruler and put himself in power. Askia Muhammad was a very good politician in that he knew how to organize things and lead a professional army. He had a good organization of a centralized government. He was also different than Soni Ali. Askia Muhammad was a convert to Islam who had also done the Hajj. Soni Ali practiced more of the localized religion. So there are some definite differences here. After Askia Muhammad, the Songhai struggled with poor leadership. The poor leadership led to a civil war among kingdoms within the empire, and Songhai became difficult to manage and control. Once weakened by fighting and drought, an army from North Africa came in and invaded Songhai. Like the two previous empires, Songhai fell apart. You can kind of see the map here where you have the Niger River. Here's Songhai. Gao has been in all these. Mali was here. Ghana was here. It's pretty much the same map, but now you've got it was longer, dug deeper in, almost from the Atlantic coast to Lake Chad. The Songhai Empire featured a navy that actually traveled along the river. because the river is so important. Uh, and this was coming to a point where the Europeans had started to establish some footholds along the African coast and were blocking off some of that long supply of gold. So Sunni Ali was not as rich as some of his predecessors in that region, like Sundiata, for instance, um, and Mansa Musa. um, didn't have that same wealth. We were moving into a different time as well. We had coming out of the Middle Ages. We are now approaching the beginning of the 16th century. So this is the same time where Europeans were starting to come over to the New World as well and colonizing there. Just before we move on, I do want to remind you a couple of the standards here that we want you to make sure you're aware of is one, knowing that this is West Africa where we are discussing. There is North Africa, Central Africa, East Africa, and Southern Africa as well. And we want to be considering, what was life like for people here. Um, and that's where we have another source that'll be linked in your Google Classroom. And it's more of a history source. Uh, but it's good to know the political part of it as well. I'll just scroll down and see if there's any things to point out. Um, Trade was still an important part, but it was getting more difficult. Boats are starting to go around the coast and into the ocean. So going across the Sahara was starting to lose favor. See, the Songhai was much more centralized in respect to federal arrangements. Um, the ruler was a absolute monarch, so that meant that he ruled where his word was the law. There's a section here on Askia Muhammad or King Muhammad the First. A little discussion on religion and the decline as well. We get to that concludes the third of the three Western African uh, kingdoms that we were going to discuss as part of this unit in social studies. There are other really important African kingdoms, so don't believe that these were the only three. Obviously, we know a lot about pharaohs in Egypt, the Nubians, and there were a number of other really important ones that are worth it to study if you find an interest in African history. If you do, feel free to ask for suggestions on readings. I'm always willing to look those up for you. We will continue moving through the Google Classroom. We're soon going to connect the dots between Europe, Africa, and North America in this chapter and studying the Columbian Exchange, which has its own controversies that we will be discussing in earnest in class. I encourage you all to visit during office hours if you have any questions, attend the live stream, or email me at mireland@psychchipschool.net. Without further ado, wish you all a minnow gizhigad. Bamapi.